Good morning, Striver. You know, it's another morning where we're having the ITAM Kitchen. It's the opportunity for us to talk and have that conversation and figure out what our next steps are. Welcome to today's ITAM Kitchen. The opportunity to have further conversation and figure out, okay, how are we doing this? How are we going that next step? And my name is Bill Talbot. And, you know, I've been recognized as a fellow and all this stuff, which is great. But what I found out was it's not good enough. I'm trying to figure out how we can move ourselves forward, figure out how we can strive ourselves, and look and see on the fly, see what can change between us and behind us. I love it. I have no idea what screensaver, but sometimes you never know what screens are going to do. Welcome, and we'll bring this all back to there. Let's see. Let's see if I can get this all taken care of. Because today we're going to talk about when it comes to measuring what matters, which is our series for the entire week. We're going to start talking about more about okay, cool. We're going to continue. We got more and more pages. We can see all the review here. We're going to talk about more measuring what matters, but today is about, is your data good enough? If you came today, it's a great session. It actually follows up with what we just talked about on Monday. Okay, I'll put that there. And let's see where I am on the slides. Okay. Because on Monday, we talked about all sorts of stuff. Exactly. Yeah, we talked about the process. We talked about how we're going to measure process, talk about the effectiveness, how are you doing the measurements. And today's about the data. And actually, it ties back to this. That's one of the reasons why I want to bring this up, is when you think about, and I want to just kind of continue the trend. There's some examples here. We'll dig into this too, which is fine. Because we do data measurements, it's typical what we're forgetting. It's typical what's overlooked. Oh, the data's going to get in there. We're going to just make it happen. And for those who don't know me, by the way, my name is Bill, Mr. Bill. I always call myself a recovering IT practitioner because it's that continual improvement. I started doing asset management 30 plus years ago, and I did it out of need, requirement. I got that email from my boss that said, Bill, you're doing great for end user support. Now I need you to track everything. I don't know how to do it. I figured it out, and I've not done it for 30 years. I have to say I'm thriving, striving, all the rest. Been blocked by some, not by others, and loved by many. And it's like, you know what? Just keep moving forward. That's exactly what I'm doing. That's why I do the ITAM Kitchen now. So thanks for all the supporters. Thanks for all making it happen. If you're online, please put in the chat where you're from. I appreciate everyone being here. Sometimes it's hard to make these because it's during the day, but it's being able to say, how can we help the community evolve? And measuring what matters, we talk about what we're talking. We talk about the data. That's our job. Just be brutally honest. That is our job. So how are we working through this? How are we further striving? How are we, /you, when I say we, looking at the data to ensure that accuracy is there? And that's important. Hold on one second. Oh. I get caught all the time. Okay, how can I get support? There we go. And the whole idea behind this, when it comes to data, is honestly, as we look at the process, we talk about the metrics, the actions, we talked about workflow process, we talk about software, we talk about hardware, we talk about retirement. We have a lot of stuff going on here. Well, you think about those activities, right? And the question is, when you really are leveraging it through the different processes, how are you doing the metrics? How are you looking at, I said, chargebacks, CMDB, well, it's whatever it is, right? The question is, from a stakeholder perspective, who's using the data? That's your first question. Who's using the data? If no one's using the data, what are you doing? I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm a coach. I'm paid to push, literally. And my question is, what are you doing if no one's using the data? If you're not using it for contracts, if you're not using it for your day-to-day activity, if you're not using it for helping keep your stakeholders informed, what are you doing? I'm just calling it out because right now, asset management is getting a really bad rap, and the industry's not helping us. And I'm going to be brutally honest, and I'm hoping this is streamed on big screens. I know there's a conference happening right now. I hope it's right there. That conference is not helping either. They can have a next step, but they don't think about these things. They're dealing with rudimentary activities. They're not dealing with the higher level discussions. How are the users actually accepting and making sure aligned moving forward? That's what all we're talking about here. So as we're putting this forward, I'm going to go to a new screen. How are the users using the system? Think about the entire life cycle. Think about the process in general. And people say, well, we get, I came with this epiphany in the co-op. If you haven't been part of the co-op, hey, look at it. There's a barcode here on the screen. Sign up. Seriously, this is what we talk about all the time. Yesterday we were talking about this. And the epiphany was, when it comes to the process and the documenting, great, make it happen. Okay, it's documented, that's great, makes it easier for other people to follow, makes it easier for you to communicate. But the reality is, people are going to judge me on it. That's great. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And here's why. Well, it took me 30 years to figure this out, and all of a sudden I had an epiphany. The process does matter. I'm not saying it doesn't. You need to have a process, et cetera, but the type of process you're using doesn't matter as long as you get the job done. You know, sometimes there's a quote out there about rules. I think it's Thomas Edison, right? You talk about rules. Sometimes rules get in the way. The question is, how are you able to get your job done? If you cannot follow the rules in place, how can you further simplify it? That's what we're talking about. It's like, Bill, how are you doing? We're talking about data. We're talking about metrics. How to put it forward. The question is back to the data. We're data geeks. That's our role. If you're not a data geek, you need to learn to be one. I'm just being brutally honest. You need to learn how the workflow works as far as hands up. People are going to be barking at you all the time. That's what's happened, right? But the question is, how are you going to move forward, right? And being able to say, how can you drive that, right? How can you help drive this forward? Well, I can't. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. They're going to continue to bark and badger you all the time. Just it's like, so what? Ignore it. You know what your job is. Your job is to help enable them. Have the data you need, and if they don't like it, ask them why. Oh, I know I'm a little rant today. Yes, I'm on a rant. I will not say otherwise, because I'm seeing practitioners totally fail in this area. Your communication, how do you move that forward? I hope I'm still alive. I think I'm still alive. I just had a blip here, but that happens. But the question is, how are you working through that with your stakeholders? How are you working to say, you've got this? How are you working to say there's more, right? Yeah, I'm still alive. Cool. Sometimes you never know what's going to happen. They cut me off. I said the thing and dropped the power. Here you go. No, because when you think about the stakeholders, and again, we have a financial group, we have a healthcare group, we have meat processing. How are you going to process all different stakeholders? Financial group, you're going to talk about the financials. You're going to talk about the different teams. It's an 18,000 employee company. It's going to be pretty big on that side, right? It could be bigger, but I was just saying, as an example, multiple different team members. How are they employing it? It doesn't matter whether you're talking about the network team. It could be the VLAN team. You have multiple different teams, right? It depends on the country and your locality on that, right? It could be the break fix team. It could be the server team. It could be a cloud team. How are you putting it together? Come back to the data. And you're right. I have not put one thing up here yet, because I'm still trying to get your attention. How are you communicating with them? Until you figure out how you're communicating with them to understand who's using the data, you don't have a job. Someone's paying you for doing nothing. Okay, I just offended everybody. No, I didn't. I'm telling you straight out. If you're not communicating outward, you're not doing your job. Just brutally honest. Again, paid to push. And there's a lot of people out there just going through the cycles and doing nothing. Oh, I'm going to go learn how to use the product. The product doesn't matter. Well, this product doesn't work. I need to replace another. The product doesn't matter. We proved that even last month, trying to transition from ServiceNow to Freshservice. The product really doesn't matter. It's what you do inherently with the data that makes the difference. Yes, you're going to have different functionality. Yes, you're going to have different alignments. Yes, you're going to have different enhancements. Absolutely. But until you work with the data, nothing else matters. That's the whole purpose behind this month. Is when you start looking at how you're looking at the data is important. Right, and I'll just go do the rant. Let's go a little bit further. Right, let's talk about CMDB. I know. First of all, if you're working at CMDB and you don't know what a CI means, you need to look it up and do a quick search real quick as we're talking here. I'm going to let you figure out further define that. Because if you don't understand what a configuration item is, I don't know what you're doing your job. Again, I'm just calling it out. But when you talk about CIs and CI accuracy, and I hit on the CMDB initially, I did this on a whim, but it's actually very accurate because typically the CMDB is where the most of the data errors occur and asset management gets blamed for it. The reality is, in CMDB world, no one talks about data accuracy. Nobody talks about data accuracy except for here in the co-op. How did I learn it? Is because about 10 years ago, I took on a CMDB administrator role. Not just admin. I was not doing, well, I was doing admin too for what I was doing. I was owner, and I had to do administrative too because the team that was trained to do the CMDB and manage it, they just got finished training the week before. So I had to figure it out and teach them how to do their job. So my point is in CMDB, you have discovery, right? Great. Okay, so you have discovery. I'm going to do a little bit thicker pen on this. There we go. You have discovery, but you also have those manual attributes. This is your headache. This maybe, most people complain about discovery not working correctly. I'd say 75% of the time, that's not the case. 90+% of the time, it's right here. It's really the manual attributes because when you think about a CI and a server, yeah, you have data coming from auto discovery. Maybe you have an asset being created from your asset management that's being brought over. You have the linkages, great, awesome, etc. But think about all the attributes you have on this device. Technical owner, business owner. You could have some escalation terms. You could have your SLAs tied to it. When I was the CMDB owner, I had between 25 and 30 different manual attributes on that CI for the servers. We're trying to do chargebacks. We did chargebacks. We even talked about splitting. We were doing splits on servers and shared servers. We were doing this, right? Had to do it all manual because that's the only way we can do it. And still that way. Because when you talk about who discovery data, is it going to provide you who your owner is? Is it going to provide you who the business owner is? It's going to provide who the technical owner is. It's going to provide your support team. No, it doesn't know any of that. None. So when you think about the manual attributes, how are you tracking and confirming that? Who are you validating with? You've got to go back to the owners and make sure you're validating. That's the only way it's going to work. And there's a CI certification process, depending upon what your tool is. There's a couple of technologies. I know ServiceNow has it. Freshworks, I don't think does. I don't think Avanti does either. I believe the OpenText or former HP software activities they do for their CMDB. And actually, that's a really good CMDB, by the way, that everyone's ignores today. So take a look at theirs. They're just really, really good, like really good. Of course, it comes from the foundation of the Paragon. That's a lot of the Paragon legacy is right there. It's really good. Very, very much not talked about today, but it's out there. It beats anything else in the market from what I've seen. But when you think about how you're doing those manual attributes, how are you tracking and determine accuracy for it? That's my question for you. How are you doing it? How are you looking at it? Who are you confirming it with? That's how you're measuring is feedback. Feedback is a gift, as we say in the world of volunteering. When you get feedback, it also goes true in the world of you're managing your data. You're not going to know all this. You might be able to wing it. Yeah, just a gut feel. It just doesn't look right. Let's fix it. You've got to go back to those business owners and say, make it happen. And you need to badger them. Well, they don't like to be bothered. It's like, you're right. They don't. No one likes to be bothered with the CMDB. Nobody. But the question is not that. The question is, when are they going to fix it? When can they confirm it to provide you the confidence that the data is right, to provide the confidence to leadership? And if they don't do it, I'm going to tell you a little dirty secret. You need to notify management they're not cooperating. Oh, okay, I've got a few mic drops today, right? You think about how you're looking at it. My screen's looking pretty good today. I kind of like it. Bunch of system updates, all of a sudden things look better. When you think about it, how are you driving that forward and working with your team members? Because it seemed to me when it comes to data accuracy, that's the last thing people think about. That's the first thing they complain about. But no one wants to put the hard work and effort to say, okay, this is going in correctly. Now, when it comes to asset management, because everyone says ITAM's easy, right? Everyone says ITAM is easy. Same thing. You have your discovery. You have your advanced shipping notice. We'll say there's procurement in there. There's your, you can say from the service desk, look at changes, right? Break fix. I say break fix because you're looking at updates, right? You have your death certificate. And the reason why I tell you this, oh gosh, that's a lot of work, etc. Really? To me, it's not. It's not. The reason why, I know I can get that from the vendor. Discovery, if it's not coming in, I need to fix it. That is a problem. It's a technology issue, so let's fix that. Procurement, I need to work with my procurement system, make sure my product catalog's coming in correctly. And it may also be your service request. I'm not thinking correctly. It's service request. We try to procure new item. That it's about that purchase request, right? Coming from the service request. That data needs to come across. Break fix. So I have these in multiple. I'm all over the place. Your break fix team, look at the updates. What updates are occurring from them? How are you looking at that? This is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. That's what your job is, to say, how are we integrating? Your job is to figure out how we integrate. Well, we can't afford the integration. I hear this time and time and time again. It's like, okay, we can't afford the integration. And you're complaining the data's bad, the data's stale. You can't make the audits. What am I missing here? I'm hearing the organization doesn't support the initiative. Okay, another mic drop. I need to be recording this. I am. Okay, there you go. You think about this, right? Think about how you're able to move forward on that part. And maybe there's integration of finance, right? Why finance? Well, that's also accounts receivable. I'll appreciate that. Finance, you know where your taxes are. You need that back and forth. Are they using the data? Are they not? If that's not, these are all users. These are all different scenarios of data, different parts of the data set to actually help measure and see if it's being paid attention to. That's what I'm talking to. So for me, this is an easy conversation. This is really easy. Well, we don't have this. The data is not put in correctly. Procurement, they just haphazardly put in procurement lines. You're right. You need to have a discussion, say we can no longer do that. And they're like, well, we can't affect the users. Yes. I'll just call BS on it. And I'll be extremely nice and family-friendly show here. Yes. You need to work with them and figure this out, how to make this work. I did this over 20 years ago with integration. One of the best integrations I ever did that had all of this, including chargebacks and ongoing differentials and tracking the charges that went to the different departments. Don't tell me this is impossible with today's tools. If you're saying that, you need to find a new job. Because you need to think about how I can do this. How can you move that forward? How can you help the business? How can you help your stakeholders? How can? The I can't doesn't exist to me. It's I can. I can support those individuals. I can look at this and help put that place. That's how you're measuring the data, the usefulness, the entire life cycle. Who's using the data on the user side? If you're not looking at it like that, you're not looking at the business. Well, I have a system and it comes with reports and I need to look, see what comes with discovery. Great, discovery's part of it. I'm 1,000% behind it. 1,000% behind it. I have no idea what time it is. Okay, cool. But when you think about how you're looking at the entire life cycle, again, I'm hitting general ITAM here. We can go to software in a second. I'm totally cool with it. But when you're measuring it, put in here, and I'll give an example. So I'm going to read off from the use case I have here, right? One was 22,000 CIs in the system for the financial group. They said, okay, came back and 61%, quality score 61%, meaning 4 out of every 10 records had significant quality issues. The leadership was concerned. Average in CI took 18 months to update. I shouldn't use something else. Depending upon your device, especially infrastructure devices, change management, how they use it, right? Which goes back to your CI. That's actually another one. That can go over here too. Actually, it should go over here. And more than over there is let's talk about change management, right? Especially around infrastructure. I'm going to back that up. If your change management is not using your CMDB, you do not have a system that's worth maintaining. You need to fix that. Again, I'm not a harping thing. I'm kind of preaching, but I'm trying to help inform you when I say that. I'm very passionate on this because this is my legacy here. Data quality is what it's all about. I did an entire thesis on this back in college. It's no joke, actually, I did do that. About the data. If you can't get the data for all of this and be able to maintain who the users are, it means nothing. Nothing. It means you have a database and you're spending licenses for a product that actually doesn't go anywhere. Welcome, you just want another tool. So when you think about this, who are the users? That's how you're measuring accuracy. You have the different data, you talk about the attributes, you talk about the handoffs, you talk about the system part, right? So for example, one time I was working on a CMDB project, mixed with asset management. And they said, okay, we have to do asset management. We struggle multiple times, make it happen. It's a different scenario. They had a big data center of 30,000 servers. So it was a small environment. Anyways, so I had to convince the CMDB owner, who was brand new, why asset management was important to him. He goes, oh my gosh, you can tell me the data quality? What can I do? Seriously, it wasn't quite that simple, but you kind of get my point, right? He totally was my biggest supporter for it because he could not support this, but we needed to have this. We needed ITAM, and we couldn't do it without the CMDB in place, and we had literally changes on the servers happening once a week, minimum every 3 weeks, changes. And it was, when we did changes, we changed 30,000 servers at one time. Over 1 weekend. We did updates. App dev was insane for this environment. And by the way, that was a Linux platform. That wasn't even Windows. Okay? But my point is, by understanding the data, he understood it. He got it. It just had to be he, because that's who I was working with. It just had to be a male. I'm not trying to be sexist. But when you think about the life cycle, how it integrates, how those handoffs happening, that's what you're actually tracking at this point. Bill, that's the process. It's more than the process. That's the data moving between team members. See, the reason why we're doing ITAM Kitchen, we're doing this, we don't talk about this. We don't talk about how we're moving between locations, how we're moving, when I say between locations, between our stakeholders. How are you understanding how it all comes together? You're orchestrating this because it's important to you. You're acting, it's like, well, it's their job, not mine. If you stepped away from that, you stepped away from your job. I'm just calling it out. Calling it out. I've seen a lot of consultants do this too, a lot. And I've seen even more practitioners do it. Practitioners are usually more roll up their sleeves more than consultants, but I've seen a lot of consultants say it's your problem, versus the practitioners like, okay, I need to figure out how to make this worthwhile and become very passionate about what you do. I've seen a lot of on-prem, on-site type folks get very passionate about their data and become the experts in what they can do when they become understanding this. Again, this lights you up like the way it's lighting me up right now. Okay, so we talk about the data accuracy, right? When you look at the updates, etc., yeah, that's part of it. If you're going from procurement to your break fix, or you're trying to stage it, it takes 3 weeks. That's a problem. That's a problem, right? But is that really a data problem? It's not. If it is, you have a different issue, right? Now, on the other part, okay, so let me go to a different scenario here. Ridgeline Health, they talk about normalization libraries. What they found is they didn't validate the discovery coming in from their vendor, making sure that the data is correct. They assumed it was correct, but if the normalization was working, it wasn't. And they never validated. So be careful. My lesson learned on this one is don't always trust what the vendor tells you. You need a validated audit. We are auditors by default. Well, I don't have time for this. You don't have time not to do it. Your ability to not track that will kick you on the other end. You know which end I'm talking about. And say, we need to do more. Because you're all of a sudden going to be looking for a new job. I'm just calling it out. I'm just kind of in the role for school hard knocks today, right? So when you think about this, how are you putting that forward? Exactly. Now, if you have any questions or anything, put it up here in chat. Absolutely. Hi, Dan. Hi, Don. Hey, good to see you there. Just didn't see you all there, but sorry. Try to do this on my own today. But when you look on this from the data accuracy, is being able to understand this goes a long ways. And management will understand, support you when you start saying, well, I understand the data, which they expect you to do, but where are those handoffs, right? Where are those handoffs? How are you doing those handoffs? Hold on. So let's look at something right here. We've got, are you communicating that brings? What are you communicating? Let me look at something here. So we're going off screen. What are you communicating that brings the why into trust, accuracy, and addresses why you bring value? Dead on. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. What type of value you're providing to them, right? How are you looking at that next step? Thank you, Don, for that, because that's extremely valuable, right? How are you bringing that value? Because everyone's like, well, AI can do all this. AI cannot do this. That human interaction, AI can help measure this? Absolutely. You want AI to be able to measure this, but they need to measure and report to both parties that the accountability still goes on your data owner. Remember, we manage the data, we don't own the data. Okay, got a lot of mic drops today. So when you think about that, how are you putting that next step? Software. Okay, let's go here. I know some people don't like it at ITAM more on the hardware side, hardware in general. It is, but and I goes saying it's like, yeah, I'll put it this way, I hate the word ham. Not that I don't believe in hardware asset management, it's more about ham's a cheap shot on several fronts. I'm not a green eggs and ham kind of guy. I do like my eggs in the morning. Ship it over easy if you want to bring it and ship it to me. That's really cool. Usually, so it's not bad, but that's a whole different story. But Sam, let's look at this, right? How can you help with measuring Sam? Let's look at the request. Software request, right? To fulfillment. You know what that does? Here's a mic drop. How many subtasks can you get under here? Plenty, right? You got your product. Your contract terms. there is nothing scripted. I've got use cases. That's all it is. This is all impromptu, right? For everybody. You have your user, cost center, status, a little bit urgency. And you kind of get the point, right? Things goes in the vendor, depends on the contract. Back to contract terms, right? You kind of get the point. And you'll have several different, actually with the manual attributes in software is not too bad. Typically where you start running struggles here is with the software product. Let's do this one. Download versus install. It's like, wow, we're doing SaaS. And okay, so let's fix this. You still have a software entitlement for SaaS, right? It's a named ID typically, right? And it's tied to your user. /employee. That employee status, if the employee disappears, you've got a problem here. Those are pretty simple. Don't make anything complicated. That's pretty simple. Oh, I don't have all the data. Why not? Well, the platform owner won't let me get to it. Now you have a problem. Now you have a true problem, right? That's a different problem, and that's not caused by you. That's caused by others restricting you from having the data you need. So what you do, and it's gonna be a fight. It always is, and I've done this with many platform owners. It's like, guys, you don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I will exactly say that. It's like you're not making logical sense. You know what to ask them? How can I do my job? Tell me how I'm supposed to do my job. You trust the data. It's like, I need to audit. Where's my audit? Well, you can't do that. There's your first problem. Back to that can't again, right? That can't word. Okay, let's figure this out, right? Because when you start going here for SAM, and some of this can be even the uninstall, right? How do you look at this? We talked about in this case, we were talking about very specifically the normalization, right? Typically, it's a product issue. How do you work with that? How do you go to that next step? You see what I'm talking about? If you're a vendor, I'll say solution provider. So all AI is going to help with this. It's going to help put a bigger spotlight on it and say there's a data problem. Now you have to figure out what the data problem is. That's our role. Where's the beta? I've given you some attributes. I give you some ideas. I give you some tables here. So be it. Let's move forward, right? How do we put that? How do we work with that? So the next one, when it comes to discovery, okay, so this meat processing, let's go a little bit further. Oh, that's good. I'm all over the place in this thing. That's okay. We're having fun. There's nothing else to do on this Wednesday. We're good. We're right here. We'll make it happen. Oh, yeah, I love it. Did a discovery scan the entire environment. Awesome. His first step seemed to be bad idea. First of all, that's a really bad idea. Yes, is what it's going to seem to be. If you don't know your assets up front and be able to normalize it, which most organizations struggle with, oh, that whole process drives me crazy. So we got it backwards. Industry has it backwards. And they returned 1,100 devices, and this spreadsheet only has 900. 246 more devices, and 80 were valid that were never validated. They found 246 that were not even in the spreadsheet, right? 80 were valid assets that had never been recorded, and 110 belonged contracts that no one ever tracked. You're going to get to this point, but until you have the core data, you can't even get this far. This is more advanced than most people. Most organizations can't get this far. And I say that not to be demeaning to anybody. It's more about this is where we need to be. Executives expect us to be. This is what they're sold on that they can do, that we can do in our jobs. But to realize we need not even make that level of maturity. So how are you communicating that to leadership? Well, they say it just happens. Yes, okay, sit down, make it happen. I'm totally cool with it. Totally cool with it. Well, that's pretty arrogant. No, it's being truthful. You can do it. Please show me how. It takes a lot of work to make this happen. A lot of work. And you've hired me for a reason to fix this problem. Let me fix the problem. And support me as I go through this. That's my biggest ask I have. There's your response to the executives. So you think about that, right? So this one, okay, we have data all over the place. 56 of them were even with personal devices. We're going to have a look at the data. So this goes back to discovery. This goes to discovery, saying, what are we actually discovering in the environment? You should be doing this as a baseline. This should be your baseline out of the gate. That's kind of what they're running into. They don't know how to do a baseline. And with this one, this problem here, that takes everybody, your entire governance, governing council, your supporters on that side, your stakeholders, which is your governing council, is they're going to be involved with this. It's like, what are we doing? Because it involves everybody. When you talk about network, floors, VLANs, take your pick, right? End user support, doesn't matter. Everybody needs to be in the room on this one. You figure out, okay, how can we fix this? Because management's looking for this to be accurate. They've been told by vendors it's going to be accurate. Put a discovery tool and start discovering. You can't even validate that discovery data is correct because you have other compliance issues that you're identifying. It happens. This is not unusual. But what I'm point is not to harp on saying, okay, how are you working with it as far as to identify it. That's a red flag. That's great. The question is, as a team, and there is no set answer on this outside of saying make it happen. As a team, you have to figure out how are you going to measure it ongoing so it doesn't occur again. There's another mic drop. How are you doing it? Because when you look at the measurements, right? Measure what matters, right? User, stakeholder, management, attributes, handoffs, so why do I get this? Why do I get on this little harping thing? Because everyone's wanting this to occur for $25 an hour. I'm just calling out. This is not a $25 an hour job. This is one of the most critical functions of the entire organization. And you're wanting with all due respect, a low-level admin to perform these functions. They can help contribute, but you need someone at a higher value that understands the value you're providing to the organization to go that next step. That's what I'm talking about. So think about that as we're moving forward. Think about how you're able to drive yourself forward. Okay, so Where does this take us? How are you measuring what you're doing today? Give you a lot of examples. Harped on quite a few things. 45 minutes into it. Might have been a few minutes late because of technology, but that happens, right? I'm trying my best to be on time. But how can you get the data back on track? If you're not measuring your data, what are you doing in your job? And don't tell me it's integrations, because your integration is about data. If you don't have an understanding of what your data is and how you're measuring the data and be able to report upon the inaccuracies, what are you doing in your role? I say that compassionately, because when you start thinking about that next step, I'm not saying you may not know what you're doing. Okay, fine. Ask for help. Because what happens is if you continue going down the path, it's like, I don't know, but I'm afraid to ask. I don't want to join a community because I don't want someone else to pay for it. Honestly, you need to step up. You need to step up a lot. Because when you're doing it at this point, that makes a bad image to everybody else in the industry, which is exactly what's happening right now. Right? And Don has a good point here. I'll read this out for him. Thank you, Don, for your contributions. Normalization of data begins and with enterprise assessment of commonalities, uniqueness of individuals and business and operational provided. Important measurements because the impact shows reality and measures value. Absolutely. And it continues on with customer experience, which lowers the value and trust. Absolutely. Totally agree. That's what we're talking about. Do you want to track? Who are you tracking against? Are you tracking your own effectiveness? How much? And you need to do that too. It's like, well, I don't want to look bad. You need to look bad. If you're trying, if you need help, look bad. Don't look horrible. Try to get replaced. That's up to you whether you want to do that or not. But you think about how you're measuring your own performance on these updates. And maybe it takes you a week to do an update or work on a specific activity. State it. That's how you get help. Well, that's not how they look at it. They're never going to look at it correctly because the industry has it misaligned. I'm just calling it out. But when you start thinking on the right path, and we've talked about that a lot today, think about how you're able to move that forward. That's important, right? This also goes to leadership. Because leadership doesn't want to deal with the day-to-day data issues. That's your job. But if you can tell them you can't do your job because of other stakeholders not updating, contributing, things like that, that provides the benchmark you really want. Because when you say benchmarks against other organizations, don't even go there. I want the benchmark against your own organization. What's your gut instinct? How can you move forward? Well, what do others think? It's like, it doesn't matter. Think about how you're able to do that for you, right? And think about how you're able to bring your data quality up that next level and measure where you are, make sure you track it. Because it's extremely important. Because this also provides you the ability to say, how am I moving forward? And give you a little bit of insight on that too, right? Because when you start communicating in that alignment, it provides you the framework to move forward with. And that's extremely critical. Well, so as we come to the wrap today, so I really don't have anything else to talk about, which I know is unheard of. I do have one more thing. All this help, this is not easy. It's not easy at all. This is actually where we roll up our sleeves as asset managers, and this is where we earn our keep. Because when we start measuring the data quality, it's usually, if it's doing really well, it just goes, okay, the job's it's done, the technology works, etc. Most people don't realize the amount of effort it does into that. I do. Anybody in this world does, as far as inside the community, at least the co-op does. If you need help from a community, be part of the co-op. It's here. It's on the button. There's a barcode up there. Go to joinitmc.com. That's where it's going to take you. And be part of a community that actually is going to support you for very little effort. You can make a lot of inroads, and I'm not talking about just say webinars. I'm talking about mastermind every week. I'm talking about inner circle where you're able to learn about things that we don't talk about externally, right? I can talk about how you're able to better present your presentations, et cetera, things like that. Talk about how to up your own game as well as the game of your organization. That's the problem we're struggling with, isn't this part? That we're struggling with this, but where do you go for help through this? Your own sanity person doing it on our own. We love to be lone rangers. That's what we do. That's how we got our job, and we love to do it. Okay, we took on the challenge, but we realized there's a little bit more than we can take on. Do I know it all? I don't. But have I been around several of these? I have from many different perspectives because it's 30 years, and that starts stacking up after a while. 30 years. It's amazing, doesn't it? I mean, Don has a little bit more, and he's even on the financial side. Don and I are good friends. We talk all the time. And there's other folks even more experienced than that we have inside the community. How are you getting the support you need is my question for you. How are you looking at that? Because when you start working with this type of information, and I provided the high level stuff, I didn't even get granular because, well, let's go through all the data. I'll be honest, if I was there live with you right now, well, I want to look at the data. I said, I want to understand how you're getting the data. Well, it just comes from the system. How is it being updated? The system's doing it. Who's updating it? Well, nobody. There's your problem. With that, it's Mr. Bill. I say this compassionately. I do care. I care a lot about this, a lot, because it's typically where the point of failure happens. The communication breaks down. People say, oh, well, the tool's supposed to fix it. It's not going to fix this problem. This is the human element problem that doesn't get fixed. You have people pontificating over, oh, we have all this stuff. And when I say I'm an auditor, I want you to prove it to me that it's working. Now, progress is going to be the road. Well, that's Mr. Bell. That's what I'm going to have for today. I'll talk to everybody on Friday. Friday, I'll be remote. I will definitely continue on because Friday, we're going to talk about managing assets and licenses end to end. We talked about that a little bit today, actually. And we'll hit that a little bit more. And that's our session on Friday. And then I will talk to them. You have yourself a great day or a great rest of the day. And again, if you need something, DM me, put it out there. This is for you. That's what the ITAM Kitchen is about. Have that heart to heart and hard conversation where no one else in the industry will. Have a great week. Talk to you later. Bye.